Hey, on today's show, we are talking about the enormous change that Airbnb just made. But it wasn't a surprise. It was rooted in the principles that they use every day. We're going to break down those principles and help you understand if you should use any of them to grow your business. I'm your co-host, Kipp Bodner, CMO at HubSpot. I'm joined by my co-host, Kieran Flanagan, who's the CMO over at Zapier. And this is Marketing Against the Grain. Let's get into today's show. You're coming in hot in a fierce shirt. It looks like you're dressed like it's January and the summertime in Ireland. What the hell's going on, my friend?
Well, man, are we, let's go around the room, Darren and Kipp. Are we a yes or a no on the current sweater?
I'm a yes.
Okay,
it's
Darren.
Leave a YouTube comment. Leave a YouTube comment.
Because Anne-Marie literally laughed at me this morning and said, she doesn't want to be seen with me if I wear this top, right?
Okay. Darren and I both like what Kieran would call a jumper, the sweater. Kieran, I'll be honest with you. In defense of Anne-Marie, I think a lot of it depends on what trousers you are wearing with that.
It does. I've got obsessed with like Lululemon jogger pants.
So are you just wearing a fancy sweater and Lululemon joggers right now?
I am wearing black Lululemon jogger pants with this sweater right now.
That is,
and I'm telling you, I'm pulling it off. I'm pulling it off.
All right, Kieran's rocking the sweater game, even though it's July, because that's how terrible the Ireland weather is.
A nice wintry July in Ireland.
All right, so Kieran, very recently, Airbnb made a pretty massive change to how they build products, market products that, quite frankly, got a lot of people on the internet. Feathers were ruffled. People were like, what are they doing? I don't understand this. Like, what the heck? Can you break it down for everybody? What exactly did they do? And what can everybody watching the show today take away from these changes? And what are these changes kind of rooted in?
Right. The drama on the internet was Brian Chesky went to I think it was the config event that Figma do. And basically, in something he was describing, he talked about how they got rid of the product management function. And one of the things he said in that was they wanted to elevate design. And so everyone took that as, wow, like product management, Airbnb are saying it's dead, it's no longer relevant. They just want to like have design and engineers. And actually that's not, he had to clarify. And so what are the two changes that they made? There's two changes that they made that are deeply rooted in how Brian thinks about building the company that we've talked about before on this show, which is he is a designer by heart. There's a really great interview for him. Bloomberg are doing these really cool things where they do like, they go into the founder's house and do the interview in the house and then walk around and talk to the founder.
Is that just like a ripoff of MTV Cribs, by the way?
Yeah, it's just MTV Cribs for like tech founders.
Cribs ripoff. Come on, Bloomberg.
It's just a little more like a little higher taste.
Highbrow Cribs.
High-brow Cribs, where it's a little more like...
The founders hide all of their super bougie stuff and pretend that they're just like minimalist and cool.
Although his background, man, he was sitting in the front room, overlooking the sea. That's my kind of house.
That's pretty dope.
All around his walls are like things that he has drawn. Like he's an incredible artist, and so that's what he studied in college. And so Airbnb at the root are a design-led company. Like that's part of who the founder is. And there's two core changes they made as part of that. They want to elevate designers to be on a par with product managers. That's where people really like lost the messaging.
Yeah.
And the second one that is really, really interesting is that they merged product management with product marketing and brought it much more into the fold along with marketing. And that's very similar to like an Apple. And so what I thought we could do here is go through both of those changes.
Ooh, I love this.
The design on a par with product manager, the merging of product managers or PMM, product marketing, and talk about some of the principles that Airbnb have within those buckets and, debate if we think they're good principles or not.
That sounds great. And I think the first point here, before we can get into that to underscore is that like every company is a reflection of the founder or founders of that company.
Right.
And they're always going to have bias to that person's skills and interests, right? And one of the things we're saying is that Airbnb's principles are all rooted in Brian Chesky's like bias for design. Right? And even these changes that we're about to talk about are rooted in that kind of value and philosophy around the importance of design. If he was a salesperson, they'd be rooted in sales, right? Like it would be rooted in whatever he believed.
Right. It's the same as Apple, very rooted in design. Steve Jobs, incredible eye for design and how things were packaged and how things looked. One of the things that I thought we would just start with actually, so if we think about the first change, which is designers and empowered product managers, elevating design within the company. One of the things I thought we would start with is in their 2023, I think it was either a summer release or one of the reports they give to the stock market. He had a really good thing that I think is something all companies should do, which is, I'll read the quote. So to improve our service, we took a design-driven approach. We created a blueprint of the entire customer experience, including 150 screens across our app and website, 72 user policies, and every interaction with customer service. And they analyzed a bunch of customer service calls, thousands of social media posts, spoke to guests, spoke to hosts, spoke to customers. And he is inspired by I don't know if you've ever seen like the old storyboards that Disney used to create in the 1950s for their movies and their cartoons. That was the inspiration for him doing that exercise. That is an incredible exercise for every singular company to go through, because it really helps you to like be in the kind of mindset of the customer, but then don't ship your org design. Like look to see where you're shipping your org design. Feel like that's like applicable to any company.
One, it's applicable to any company. Two, Kieran, I want to point out that we've set a record, I think, maybe of most minutes into the show in the last 90 days without saying AI.
Yeah.
But I have to say AI now, because artificial intelligence is going to make it easier for every company to do what you just said, right? The ability to process large customer support call volume or sales call volume and look for the trends and summarize it and really figure out where your strengths and weaknesses are. Right now, that is very arduous manual work, and that is going to become much, much easier, and it already is much easier today. So if you think what Brian and the team at Airbnb have done is daunting, understand that one, technology is going to help you make it less daunting, and two, it's really, really important because Brian Halligan, who founded HubSpot, I think one of his core points is, modern companies can disrupt and innovate on experience. And one of the biggest ways to improve your experience is to reduce the friction in that experience. Right. And when you're looking at the whole journey from website to your application to your support experience, that is really about reducing friction. What are the parts there where you're just like, oh my gosh, this is so painful. No wonder nobody does this, or no wonder everybody hates this, right? And normally what happens, the average company is just like, hey, we're awesome at everything. It's great. You can't figure it out, customer. That's your problem, loser, right? And instead, the great companies do what Brian and Airbnb have done, and they break down the customer journey. They look at individual steps and they say, wow, that step is brutal. We got to fix it, because I wouldn't even ask my mom to go and do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think about this all the time. Like every customer journey has points of motivation and points of friction, right? Like you're either motivating the customer or you are adding friction to that customer journey. Now, sometimes you add friction because you want to qualify people and make sure the right people are signing up for your product. But I'll talk about one of the most unrelatable examples of this for our audience. I'll talk to you about what the watch was. I bought a luxury watch, expensive watch, and I went through the purchase.
I think this is breaking news to me.
Yeah, I know. I'll WhatsApp you because you're not going to like the watch. I bought the watch brand that you would never buy, because it is not for watch connoisseurs. It is for flashy people who just like to have a flashy looking watch.
First of all, I could already sketch this watch out of my head just based on that description. Second of all,
an everyday watch.
I'd like to point out that Kieran was so embarrassed about his choice that he wouldn't even confer with me ahead of time.
It's a Hublot, and I know you hate Hublots.
I know you hate Hublots. You needed to tell me that? Like you thought I didn't know that?
I'm embarrassed telling you because you're like.
You thought I didn't know that you had bought a black Hublot with some weird gold or colored accents? Blue. Sorry. It's some dark colored with some flashy accent.
Only 100 made.
Of course you did.
Coming to inbound, main stage.
This is the least surprising thing I have heard.
Oh, I know when I was buying, I was like, I had Kipp's voice in my head going, that's not going to maintain its value. Why are you buying that? It's made from shitty parts. It's overpriced for people like you who just like flashy shit. I'm like, I'm still fucking buying the watch. I'm still fucking buying the watch.
I'm sorry that my advice could not help you. But
I went through that experience and I was like, shit, this is a lot of money I spent on this watch. And it was like the pre-purchase, awesome. The post-purchase, one of the worst experiences of my life.
And that's brutal, man.
It's so easy to not do this. Like, I don't understand why companies don't understand 2023, why you should not have an incredible customer experience. And so coming all the way back to like this point.
Hold on. Before you come back to it, what I would say is I think some companies just don't understand. I think other companies, Kieran, understand they should have a customer experience and are just unwilling to make the trade-offs. Like, oh yeah, that stinks, but like we're not willing to spend the money to fix it because we don't think it's important enough. We think this other thing's important enough. Or it's
they
more
think
important.
acquisition
And
is
that's
important.
wrong.
Yeah, it's that people just don't understand retention is the most important. Retention will kill your business. Retention will kill your business. All right, design principles. There's 3 I wanted to take from this in this segment. So one of the ones I really like, which is much more tactical, but like really applicable to all of the people who listen to the shows, is like one of the issues Brian has with A/B testing. And I agree with this wholeheartedly.
We've had a large argument back and forth on A/B testing on the show, and I think this is just another point in our quiver about how we feel about A/B testing.
Right. But this is good. I think you might actually agree with this. So if you're going to do an A/B test, it should be a hypothesis. What he means by that is every marketer makes this mistake, and actually you should spend much more time with product. What he means by that is someone will come in with a A/B test, and this is not the full quote. I'm going to finish the quote out, but I just want to make sure we know what he said, hypothesis driven. What he means by that is don't come in and say, well, this A/B test is to try to figure out if this thing will increase by 5%. That is actually the outcome, not the insight. And so what he says is if an A/B test works, you should be able to say the why, because it's deeply rooted in a customer insight that you are trying to like research and prove, whether that's disprove or prove, and not the what, which is like this increase something by X%. I will say that is the most common error mistake that every single growth marketer makes.
Kieran, for the TikToks, what I would tell you is I'm about to break down the 3 levels of A/B testing. The worst bottom, like you should really like question your life level of A/B testing is like, hey, this button is green. What would happen if I make this button red? Like that is the worst possible version of A/B testing, where you're just like picking random elements and being like, maybe I'll change them. Then you get a little bit better when it's like, oh, I want to increase the performance of this page by 5%. So I'm going to change all these things until I get to the 5%. And normally come up with a bunch of iterations where you go back and forward and you waste a bunch of time. And then the best version of A/B testing is, again, right in line with what Brian Chesky at Airbnb believes, which is what problem is my customer trying to solve? And what am I doing to try to make that solution better for them? And in doing that, do I get a better outcome or a worse outcome than I was getting previously?
Right. It's reframing that tests are a research medium where you can actually gather data around insights that you have. You should not think of them as like, how do I increase the digits of something? Now that's an outcome, but I think if you can deeply root it in the customer insight, you'll be much better. The second thing is, we've talked about this one, so we can kind of skip over it, which is anything new starts with an insight, but it's really the storyboard, the journey of personas. So Airbnb, Brian deeply roots the company in making sure that you map out all touch points and you systematically fix the core product and service. Now, one of the things I wanted to like touch on this is that we can maybe jump into because it's slightly tangential, but he says that what he means by fix the core product and service is you should never launch new products unless you have an incredible core product. And if that core product has a bunch of issues, you should not start to build new products until you fix those. And that's actually a pretty interesting debate because most of the way companies grow is through multi-product. And like, do you wait to do that until you have like all of the things fixed in the core product or not?
Well, yeah. So most companies die because they start something, they see some success, and they go and build something new. And they don't kind of finish the success with the original thing they have and make it good enough, which is, I think, the point he's really pushing on here, which is like, hey, you start with one thing, make it really good and defensible and long lasting, and then go and build new things, whether that be additional features, new product lines, new services, what have you, depending on the type of business, right? And I think that's what we're saying is most companies fail because of a lack of focus and a lack of hubris, right? It's like, oh, our core product's awesome. Nobody could build something better. We're going to go build this other thing. And in the 6 months they go build that other thing, somebody comes along and disrupts their core business, and then they're out of luck, right? And that is the problem of not having the intellectual honesty to say, no, this is what we're good at, but our customers are still having a lot of huge problems in these areas, and we need to fix those before we go on and expand into something new.
Yeah, you have to get that balance correct. And then the last one, which I really like, because I have a point around this for everyone who listens to the show. So the last principle in this section is ship things you are proud of. Airbnb focuses on shipping things that they're proud of. If you don't want to put your name on it, you don't ship it. That's actually why they merged product marketing and product management together. One of the things I tell my team all the time and people in the team is, you know, one of the common questions you probably get asked is like, how do I know I'm working on the most important stuff? Like, how do I prioritize my time? Like, is this the batch work I should be doing? And I would say, like, if you were asked to stand up in front of the founder or the CEO at the end of the month and present to them, what did you spend your time on? And how did it make the customer's life better? Are you proud of the work that you did? That's a pretty good litmus test for me of like, are you working on the right stuff?
Well, I think that's a great litmus test around, are you working on the right stuff? When you think about, is the stuff you're doing good enough, which is the second part of that, right? It's like, oh, I'm working on something that I think is important, but is it good? The way that Kieran, I think the way you and I used to think about this, and I think I want to give everybody the ultimate litmus test here. If you are working on something, especially if you're a marketer and you're working on a new email campaign, a piece of content, what have you, and you're just like, I can't wait for this to get out there. Like, right. I literally cannot wait. It is going to win. It is going to kill it. Then you know what? It is. Like, there's a direct correlation to your level of excitement and the result that thing is going to achieve. If you're like, oh yeah, I'm really ready to get this off the door so I can move on to the next thing, then you just scrap the thing you're working on right now because it's not going to do shit.
Right. I think that's I think how excited you are about the work is directly related to like how successful that work will be. Except in this one case, let me give you the one example where this didn't work for me. A lot of my ideas were inspired by my days of spending a lot of time on the Warrior Forum. Remember we talked about, I am a troll, but I wasn't trolling people in the Warrior Forum. Remember we talked about the Warrior Forum before? It's like all of the direct marketers and like the likes of Frank Kearns and all of these amazing direct marketers, but super sketchy in some ways.
Super sketchy.
And they did the direct sales pages, and like the direct sales page was literally like 20,000 pages long. You have to like scroll till like you actually bought. And they used to do these kind of like disappearing, so they would have 24 hours, right? And it would just disappear and you could not get that price anymore. Now, it would come back online at a new price for like a certain amount of time because it's all like psychology. And so I was like, disappearing content. I'm super excited. You remember I did the campaign in HubSpot.
I loved you. You had an awesome disappearing content campaign.
We did a disappearing content campaign, and it turns out it doesn't perform actually that well. People in B2B are not as enthusiastic about disappearing content, but ideas
content
matter.
Content is not scarcity driven. Products are scarcity driven, right? And so I think one of the things we've learned over the years is
that is true. Actually,
like, what is the principle you're applying to this strategy, and like, is it actually true? You know, and you were saying like, oh, scarcity is going to make this more valuable, and it's like, oh, actually, this thing. In this case, content information, scarcity does not make it more valuable.
Right. Yeah, right? We should do actually a breakdown of the best psychology lessons from incredible copywriters. That's what we need to do. Okay, getting into the second, because I think this is a really good section. Merging of product marketing and product management, bringing product much more into the fold with marketing.
This is very spicy.
Yeah, that was his second. So his actual quote here was, designers are equal to product managers. We got rid of the classic product management function. Apple didn't have it either. We combined product management with product marketing. And here's like the really important line. And we said that you can't develop products unless you can talk about the products. So this comes into the first principle they have, which is involve marketing early. And that's the importance of the PMM and product management and product marketing function being merged together. And his point is, you have a lot of features and things like that die because you just didn't market them properly.
Correct.
And those two things being siloed are like the reason those things die. And so I think that's like a pretty interesting change. That's a real fundamental change to how most B2B companies operate, is that product marketing function living within marketing, living within product marketing.
Well, the bone I would pick with Brian Chesky and the Airbnb folks is like, that's really not product marketing what he's talking about. What he's really talking about is like product comms, product positioning. It's a subset of product marketing. I think of product marketing from everything to developing the persona, positioning the product, packaging the product, but then you have to launch the product, train the product, educate, existing customers, new customers, all of that. And he's basically saying, I want to take the first 20 or 30% of product marketing and merge that with product management. But he's doing it for the right reason, which you point out, which is like, hey, if you're just a product manager and you're building something in a vacuum, you don't know how to properly communicate the value for that product and who that product is specifically for, then you're just wasting your time, right? And he's basically gone all in on the conviction of, wow, I want my product to tell a story and resonate with my customers. And if it's going to do that, then my product managers need to be able to tell the story and deeply connect with my customers.
Right. He's kind of here in a roundabout way saying, first of all, distribution really matters.
Because it does.
Because it does.
TLDR, it does.
And one of the things that I think has happened since the evolution of growth, and what I've seen happen in companies, is product managers have had to get much, much better around how does this feature get traction? How does this feature lead to upgrades to the core product? So they actually start to think about like the go-to-market of their feature. And I guess what Brian's getting at here is like, that's what he wants product managers to like deeply care about, is not just like build the thing, but how does the thing exist with the rest of the platform? How does it get traction? How do you get people to upgrade? How do you get people to expand revenue? Like really think through the kind of entire customer journey of that feature or that product.
Yeah, I think that's why you're going to see, especially in software, most software companies long-term move to a consumption model, right? Because then every new product or feature that you roll out, it has this very direct contributable role to play in new revenue and revenue retention and everything, because is this driving consumption? Is it driving adoption, or is it not? And I think you're going to see some pricing and packaging evolution change because of this. And I think Airbnb is essentially a consumption marketplace, and so I think for them, this change makes all kinds of sense. I think if you're maybe a more traditional SaaS business, this change is a little harder to pull off, candidly. But if you are a marketplace business or a consumption-priced business, this merge of product marketing and product management, at least partially, I think does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then the last one in this, I have a couple of like fun quotes for him just in terms of hypergrowth. But I don't know I got this from a tweet around like the Airbnb's principles. And so I didn't get the context behind it, but I think it's funny. So I want to just see like, what do you think the context is behind it? This is the health of the company is the relationship between marketing and engineering. And then it says like marketing is like waiters. Engineers are like chefs. When waiters try to enter the kitchen, the chef usually yells at them, "This is not healthy."
It's actually super true.
It's actually true.
I feel seen.
Yeah, I just wonder what the like takeaway is. That
There's
happens.
Not really one. But
I guess it shouldn't happen.
I agree. It's like plus one, but I don't know why.
I think it happens because what I've seen it happen, like coming from an engineering background and actually being much more of a marketer in the way I approach things, where have I fallen down in terms of working with engineers? And where do I think this is a commonality among marketers? Is engineers are problem solvers, not order takers. Yes. And I think that's what actually waiters give orders and chefs then have to cook to order. That's not what I actually disagree with engineers. Engineers are chefs, but chefs make the menu to solve for the customer.
Correct.
And what marketers tend to do is like they are trying to make the menu and then just give the orders to the chef to like cook what they want them to cook. Basically, bring problems, not solutions, and articulate problem, not try to like just give orders, give solutions.
Yeah, said differently, most conflict within a company is rooted in who is the person identifying the problem to be solved.
100%. Yeah, right? This is a great point.
Like that's just the truth.
That's it.
And once you can align on who is the person identifying the problem and who are the people supporting the solution to that problem, most conflict goes away.
Right.
All right. Well, I know we're getting close to the end, Kieran. I think you had a couple other principles you wanted to share.
There's two things I wanted to say, two last principles on leadership and culture that I think are really good insights from Brian. First of all, I really like what he said in culture, which is culture. In tech, we've got carried away that culture is all of the kind of like stuff that doesn't matter, right? The kind of like trips, the fucking bouncy balls, the free lunches, all that shit. Like what he thinks the culture is.
The bouncy balls got in there. It was fantastic.
I tell you, Google had like the balls that you gotta like bounce around.
I saw them. I just
all right.
Bouncy balls made me laugh. That's all I'm saying.
So what he thinks culture is really like much more like what Toby, the founder of Shopify, the way he describes it. Like you're a sports team. Don't think of it as your family. Think of it as your sports team. And really what culture is, it's the shared behaviors you have as a team. It's the shared learnings you have from working in times of pressure and how you showed up to those times of pressure. And I think that to me resonates much more than a lot of like the fluffy ways that I hear company talk about culture. Like I would really, I want to be on like a winning sports team. I don't need more family members.
Remember to everybody out there, winning fixes everything.
Winning does fix everything.
If you're on a winning team, even if you're the fucking water person, like you're happy. You're happy. You're like,
you're
right?
just like, I'm
just saying.
Woohoo! If you're like the best player everything. On a bad team, you just feel shitty. So
exactly, you could be a superstar on the last place team, and you're like, man, I hate my life.
Yeah. Two last things. Why do people outgrow companies? What Brian says is that you have to grow faster than the company during periods of hypergrowth. I think that's why you end up having companies that go through hypergrowth and have all these people sitting in seats and they're just no longer the right people because they haven't grown as fast as the company. Last thing I'll leave everyone with is the myth of like great leaders hire great people and then just empower them to go do work. Brian thinks that great leaders are in the weeds showing examples of great work. And I truly believe that.
I think great leaders are just totally in the weeds and they're setting clear expectations and they're being like, this is what good looks like.
Exactly.
Right?
Boom. Fire.
All right. I kind of like the changes that Brian and Airbnb made. I don't know that for every company, but they're really interesting. I love that they're rooted in the principles of how they run that business. I think we've broken those principles down for you pretty well today. And there's parts of those that I think anybody can apply in their business. Hit us up. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit us up in the YouTube comments. We'd love to hear what your favorite takeaway from these principles are, what your favorite principle was. And we will see you real soon on Marketing Against the Grain.
This data is wrong every freaking time.
Have you heard of HubSpot? HubSpot is a CRM platform where everything is fully integrated.
Whoa, I can see the client's whole history, calls, support tickets, emails, and here's a task from 3 days ago I totally missed.
HubSpot. Grow better.